Back on the Young Turks. Now we have brought on a guest to talk about an interesting topic that we brought up yesterday. They did a poll recently, Zogby poll. It was actually commissioned by a conservative leading group called the O'Leary Report, but it didn't turn out with conservative results. 52% of voters supported legalizing and taxing marijuana instead of continuing the current, what is in essence a prohibition policy. The result was 52 to 37. It's the second poll in a row to say a majority of Americans saying that marijuana should be legalized. Now, Judge James Gray was on the Supreme Court of Orange County until he retired this year, and he has gotten many awards and recognitions. And now he's also part of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and he joins us now. Judge Gray, welcome to the Young Turks.
Well, thank you, and it's certainly nice to be with you.
We're very happy to have you. Let's first talk about your record while on the bench. You, in 1987, came up with a way for victims of drunk driving to tell their stories in front of the people who did it. And you'll also help to establish a program later where youthful offenders would go and see the results of drunk driving accidents of people in the hospital. Tell me about those two programs real quickly and what drove you to institute them.
Well, absolutely. It's key that people be held accountable for their actions, and nobody's going to dispute that. So as far as the alcohol-related offenses were concerned, if you'd take people that were not alcoholic and show them, just sit them down and show them what could be the results of their activity, it really can get to people. If they are addicted to alcohol, then you have to take them off alcohol before educational programs will do that. But it was clear to me when I first went on the municipal court, which is the lower trial court here in California, that alcohol-related offenses were the biggest unmet needs that we had. And we put in programs to address that by taking dangerous drivers and replacing them with sober drivers. And it worked pretty well, and I'm proud of it.
Well, it's innovative, and it also gets tough on them because they have to deal with the consequences of their actions. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and that makes sense in a couple of different ways. What put you over the top in saying our campaign against marijuana and keeping it illegal is not working?
Well, you couldn't sit on my bench and watch us churning low-level drug offenders through the system. Putting them in jail doesn't help, and that's obviously the most expensive result, too. You see them back again because alcoholism and any drug addiction is a medical problem. And it makes as much sense to me to put this gifted actor Robert Downey Jr. in jail for his cocaine problem, and he'll always have one. He's doing pretty well now. But it would have made as much sense there as putting Betty Ford in jail for her alcohol problem. It's the same thing. But like you were saying, if Betty Ford, Robert Downey Jr., you or I drove a motor vehicle while impaired by, you fill in the blank, any of these drugs, then that's an issue for the criminal justice system because now by their actions, they're putting our safety at risk.
You know, it's interesting because I got that same sense today as the front man for the group Fish actually went to go testify in front of Congress. His name is Trey Anastasio, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he was addicted to a number of things. But what's funny is, if he's addicted to alcohol, that's not illegal. But if he's addicted to another drug, whether it's marijuana or something else, then that is illegal. Doesn't that seem absurd?
It seems silly. And in fact, you or I tonight could go home and drink 10 martinis and not be in violation of law, even though clearly that would not be a healthy thing to do, a smart thing to do. But there's only so much that a government can, or in my view should do, to try to control what we put into our bodies. It makes as much sense for that to happen as it does the government what we put into our minds, from my standpoint. Of course, I'm a libertarian, and I'm proud of that. But hold people accountable for their actions. That works. What else works in this area or any other? Honest education. That's working with cigarette smoking today. Putting the incentives where they should be, because today, with regard to drug prohibition policy, the incentives are all on their head. You know, there's so much money to be made in getting you, your neighbors, and your children hooked on drugs that people sell them. And the third thing, of course, is treatment and prevention, and those things work too.
You know, Judge Gray, I read another fact today about drug abuse that I couldn't quite believe, and I want to run it by you. 2.3 million adults in this country are behind bars. That's nearly 1% of the American population. But out of the 2.3, 1.2 million are nonviolent drug abusers. Now, is there something wrong with that stat? Is it that they're pleading down actual drug sellers to drug users, and that's why that number is so high? Because otherwise, that number seems unbelievable.
You know, the low-hanging fruit in the criminal justice system are drug-addicted people. They're easy to incarcerate. They're easy to convict, and so we have an abominably large number of those there. We have thousands of people in prison in the state of California because they did nothing but smoke marijuana. Why? Because they were on parole for whatever reason, and then the terms always are, use no form of illicit substance. They smoke marijuana within 30 days of being drug tested, and they're put back in prison again, which is just enormously expensive from a human standpoint, certainly, as well as a financial one. So I say, and I've never used any form of illicit substance, but I say that the most dangerous thing about marijuana is jail, and I mean it.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, too. We're talking to Judge James Gray. He was on the Superior Court of Orange County, and now he's part of a group that wants to end prohibition of marijuana. So let's talk about the solution, Judge Gray. Is it just marijuana? Is it other forms of drugs that should be legalized? And how else can we deal with addicts?
Well, the best thing to do, and the thing that people are willing to accept, and let's just find out, is to treat marijuana like alcohol. And I happen to think that we should treat other drugs that way as well, but let's just start with that and see what happens. What would happen? Well, I can speak only for the state of California, but we would save $1 billion that now we are spending in a futile effort to eradicate marijuana around the state and prosecute and incarcerate nonviolent marijuana offenders. And you can tell how successful we are in eradicating marijuana because it's still the largest cash crop in our state. Number two thing is that we could tax it and generate revenue of $1.3 billion. So that's a change in our budget deficit of $3 billion every year, and you'd think somebody would notice. But the third thing is that it would make marijuana less available for children than it is today, and I think that trumps the first two. Why? Because as soon as you prohibit this substance, you give up all of your ability to regulate it, control it. You don't, in effect, have today a marijuana dealer asking for ID. So those are things that we simply need to do. And like you show in that poll, and there was a subsequent field poll as well just a couple of days ago, showing 56% of the voters in California favor treating marijuana like alcohol. This is going to sweep the nation. And then I promise you, once we have looked at what has happened, we will all group arm in arm and think how we ever could have maintained such a failed system for so long.
Judge Gray, assuming that it's still illegal marijuana, are drug courts the answer? Because I'm going to run one more number by you here. Apparently, if you send a drug abuser to jail, he continues to abuse drugs in 85 to 95% of the cases. That's just the ones we know. It could be as high as 100%. And that they return to crime at a rate of 60 to 80%. Those are horrible numbers. But if you go to drug court, apparently 75% of graduates stay out of jail for at least the next 2 years.
That's pretty accurate. Our recidivism rate without things like drug court and meaningful drug treatment are abysmally high, which is very expensive, of course, humanly as well as financially. But the deal is that drug courts, and in fact, what I was doing with alcohol is probably the first drug court in the country back in 1984. But drug courts are really take a lot of time and effort. And so I say let's devote the drug court system to the people that are out there causing damage in the society, the people that are driving under the influence, the burglars, the people that are getting assaults under the influence, etc. Because we'll never run out of problem users. And then as far as the people that are not causing problems, let's not bring them into the criminal justice system in the first place and try drug treatment as well as honest education to address that issue.
Final question, real quick for you, Judge Gray. The issue, informally, of course, they're not on the record, but how many of the people that you sat with that were on the bench thought, we're not winning this war on drugs, and that we have to go in the direction that you're suggesting?
I'll even expand the question. Chiefs of police, mayors, people in the legislatures, well over half, those that would even talk to me privately, in the judge's elevator, in the judge's lunchroom, they all realize what we're doing isn't working. By the way, there's so much to discuss. I have a website that people want some more information, which is judgejimgray.com, and I have written that book, too, just to try to discuss this openly and honestly. And I appreciate being able to discuss this with you this evening.
All right, everybody check out judgejimgray.com. and we really appreciate you coming on to talk with us on the Young Turks.
Life is good. Take care.
All right, you as well. Now, Judge Gray lives in Newport Beach. I was in Newport Beach the other day, and if you lived in Newport Beach, life would be good too. Man, do they have some nice views over there. Looks real good. But look, the bottom line on this is, this is untenable. Who thinks we're winning the war on drugs? Is there really anyone out there, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, who thinks, no, we got this thing nailed. We got it on lockdown. It's over. We're winning the war on drugs. Nobody thinks that. And my main problem with this isn't the drug use. It's the gangs that are created because of the drug use that lead to far more actual violent crime. We have to wisen up here. We're not going down the right road. We got to switch directions.